Good evening. It's 6 o'clock. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Findlay City Council meeting of August 6, 2024. A regular session. We will start this evening's meeting with the roll call.
Mr. Ballman.
Here.
Mr. DeArmond.
Here.
Ms. Frischi.
Here.
Mr. Greeno.
Here.
Mr. Hellman.
Here.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Here.
Mr. Palmer.
Here.
Mr. Russell.
Here.
Ms. Warnicki.
Here.
Mr. Wopser.
Present.
At this time, I'd like to welcome Julius Rudecki to come down and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Julius, please introduce yourself. Let us know what troop you're from, and then go ahead and lead us. So if you'd please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, what troop are you in?
I'm troop 319.
All right, there you go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will you please join me in a moment of silence? Thank you, Julius. I will entertain a motion to accept the July 16th public hearing minutes and the July 16th regular session of City Council minutes. Mr. Palmer. Second. Mr. DeArmond. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. They are accepted. We have no add-ons or replacements from tonight's agendas. We have no proclamations. We have no recognitions or retirement resolutions. We do have two petitions.
An alley vacation request from Joshua Slough for the east-west alley between lots 4671, 4716, 4672, and 4715 in Park Addition. And also a zoning amendment request from Joshua Slough to change the zoning of 615 East Edgar Avenue from R2 medium lot residential to R3 small lot residential.
Any questions or comments? Both items will be referred to the City Planning Commission and the Planning and Zoning Committee. We do have two oral communications tonight. First, we have Shelby Coleman. Shelby lives at 808 Putnam Street, Apartment C, and he'd like to speak to the marijuana ordinance. Good.
I guess I'd like to start off by asking, when did the city of Findlay get out of the business of running the city and into the business of legislating morality? The good people of the state of Ohio have spoken on this matter. It is not for you people as a collective group to go against the will of the people by outlawing what has been passed. Second of all, see a lot of good ideas and a lot of bad ideas coming out of this room, such as the park that nobody wants, that's in a bad location. We don't have parking for it. But if you wanted to do something like that, the numbers of the tax money collected from legal weed, you can't refute it. It's millions to hundreds of millions of dollars. You guys have to recognize that fact. You also have to recognize that the fact that that money could do something for the homeless. We got a guy sleeping under the awning out here, for God's sakes. We walked in the leading building of this city, right past somebody sleeping under the awning. What does that mean to you people? Anything? You could use that money to do something about that. We have junkies and hobos sleeping underneath the bridge on Main Street. Perhaps some millions of dollars in marijuana tax money could do something about that. We could quit wasting hundreds of thousands and tens of thousands of dollars putting people in jail for this stuff. I mean, I was over here a minute ago, and as I looked at you great members here, I had to ask myself, where are the people in my age group represented in this? I'm 52. I don't really see it over there. I think you guys have to come along and start realizing that times have changed. You have to acknowledge and change with them. That's about where I'm at with it. It seems like a lot of decisions and a lot of monies and things are being used in ways that don't reflect or represent not only my age group, but 30-year-olds and 20-year-olds and stuff. It's got to change, people. I mean, how many of you guys walk past the guy in a sleeping bag out there? Does anybody want to acknowledge that? Do you not think it's Findlay, Ohio? We have to do better. Not want to, not need to. Have to. It's got to stop. You got river walks to nowhere. We got motels full of migrants that we can't do anything with. But yet the biggest money-making plan to come across your desk is now in question. That doesn't even make logical sense, people. Come on. And once again, it seems like you're trying to legislate morality, not law. The people of the state, the people of the county, and the people of this very city have spoken on this matter. That's a dead issue. You should quit trying to interfere with it and start figuring out how to capitalize on it. I mean, like I said, I've seen a lot of good ideas. I've seen a lot of bad ideas, but the one thing all ideas have in common, it's right there. It's all tax money. It's all got to come from tax money. It's all got to come from private donors. Have you guys even looked into the millions, hundreds of millions of dollars that places like Monroe, Michigan are raking in? Hundreds of millions of dollars that other small towns in Michigan are raking in. Where do you think you people are getting the weed from? They're going to Michigan and getting it. They're driving it up I-75. Is that something you want to promote by denying this? You're not going to get rid of it. Figure out how to utilize it. You got to start using out-of-the-box thinking for out-of-the-box problems. I realize a lot of you guys are from the older generation. Hey, that's great. You got a lot of age, you got a lot of wisdom, but you have to start.
Mr. Coleman, that's your 4 minutes.
Oh, that's 4? All right, thanks a lot.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Coleman? Hang on just a second. If they have a question for you, you need to be at the podium. Mr.
This may
Baumann.
be more for the administration, because I think maybe there's some confusion around perhaps what this legislation is meant to do. This is to hit the pause button so that we can get the regs from the state of Ohio. It's not saying that we would never consider having a dispensary in Findlay, Ohio. It's saying that we're hitting the pause button so that we can get the regs set from the state and talk about that in the future. How to zone them, et cetera. Correct?
Mayor?
That is correct. So this would give us the time about 12 months and hopefully have the conversation sooner. I know the Planning and Zoning Committee has already started requesting some information, be prepared. And then we'll have the discussion at Planning and Zoning.
Does that not seem like getting the horse in front of or the carriage in front of the horse?
Mr. Coleman, don't interrupt, okay? Thank you.
So the Planning and Zoning Committee would look at, one of the reasons that we had waited until this point in time was the state was supposed to provide more robust guidance. The state legislature was going to take action and make some modifications, and so we were kind of waiting to hear from them. Then they didn't, and now they've just said, okay, now we're going under the previous rules. So this will allow us to look at their rules and then look at where we'll have to change. Our current zoning regulations do not permit this medical dispensaries, so we don't have any. And then we need to look at, okay, if we are going to allow these in the community, where do we want to allow them, and how does that fit within the state regulations that they have put in place? So the conversation is going to move forward at the Planning and Zoning Committee. As I was saying, they've requested information. They'll look at the aspects, look at anything that we want to put in place, and then where in the community with zoning we would want to permit them.
Mr. Coleman?
I get to respond to that? Okay, now I hear what you're saying. I want you to know that. I do hear what you're saying. But you're saying you were waiting on basically updated and up to time regulations and rules from the state. But when the state drugged their feet, because that's what they did, they drugged their feet and said, okay, we're going to refer back to the old rules. Is that the correct understanding? Why wasn't you prepared to work under the old rules?
Well, currently the moratorium that we have in place would have restricted any of them. And so this is saying now for the medical, the previous one was for medical. Now for the recreational, now we have to determine where in our zoning code we want these specifically to go. Otherwise, the only parameters are the state regulations. And from our community standpoint, we typically are a little more restrictive beyond the state regulations. So that's why we're putting this in place, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to extend for the full 12 months. It just is saying that it can be in place for that long. We'll have the conversation sooner. We'll roll out our regulations and then go from there.
I don't really feel like you answered my question there. You said we reverted back to the old rules. Why were you not prepared to go forward under the old rules?
Because our old rules, we just had a moratorium in place under those as well. So we really didn't have any local prescriptive zoning that we wanted to follow. So I'm not gonna get into a back and forth with you on the planning and zoning committee is the one that's going to have to change our zoning code to allow them. And that's the conversation that we're gonna have next. But at this point in time, we wanna make sure that it's well thought out. And you're correct, we didn't have the conversation because we didn't know what rules we were playing with in the new regulations. And in the old regulations, we hadn't had that conversation because we had opted as a community to not allow them at all. So now it's time that we have the public conversation, and that is what council will be moving forward at this.
Mr. Russell?
Mr. Coleman, under current state law, medical facilities were, the licenses for those were determined by the state, and they said they had to be in specific locations. Hancock County did not get a medical dispensary. There was none that were licensed. The state of Ohio for recreational marijuana to this point has said, if you have a medical dispensary, we will let you dispense recreational.
Correct.
Okay. Right now, there are no legal medical dispensaries allowed in Hancock County. Therefore, there are no legal recreational facilities allowed in Hancock County. That is the state's rules. They have also put some parameters as to where medical facilities really cannot be, and it's within distance from schools, libraries, playgrounds, parks, etc. And so that mapping has to be, we have to look at that in terms of our zoning and how it works or doesn't work. But right now, the state has given very little direction as to where recreational facilities can be, except for the fact that they can only be at a place that's currently selling medical marijuana, and there are no medical dispensaries licensed for Hancock County. Therefore, really, for us, this issue is moot at the current time. The concern is that the state will instantly say, drop the flag and say, anywhere that, remove that restriction, and at that point in time, then our zoning rules need to be in place. I mean, I'm not going to speak for Planning and Zoning Chairman Ballman, but I would expect the Planning and Zoning Committee to start investigating this more. I know that Chairman Ballman and I have asked our Hancock Regional Planning, which does our zoning maps, to start mapping out the areas that facilities would be restricted based on what's in Ohio Revised Code as it is. But if the state legislature changed Ohio Revised Code, we have to respond, and that takes time.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, for me personally, I'm not a proponent of recreational marijuana, but I will I will work towards and vote with allowing facilities in the city, because 52% of the citizens in Findlay voted for it.
Yes, they did.
The county voted. My understanding is the total county voted against it. City of Findlay voted like 52-48 in favor, and to look for how we best zone, just like we zone anything else, any other commercial activity. And we have zoning rules, and it's just to make sure that it fits with the city, and that will take time. But I would hope by the time that we actually get final rules from as final as they can be from the Ohio legislature, we will promptly have our rules in place and then let the market work.
What time frame would you estimate? Now, I don't want to hold you to a number because I get it. What do you think a reasonable time frame, and what do you think that time frame would be to have these rules in place?
I would refer that question to our state representatives and state senators.
I'm not dealing with state senators and representatives. I'm dealing with Findlay City Council.
Well, they're the first step in the line.
Sounds
And
like
so-
you're passing the buck, Mr. Russell. Now, you don't actually live in Findlay.
Mr. Coleman, just a second. Mr. Coleman, I just want to let you know that Mr. Baumann will make sure that you're aware when that planning and zoning meeting is. That's open for the public, and you
Which
can
one's
come.
Mr. Baumann?
He's raising his hand
Oh,
over
okay,
there.
right.
He's the chairman of that committee. All the public is invited to that.
And I share Mr. Russell's opinion as well. We're going to take a hard look at this. We've asked the administration for their side of things, and once we have those, we're going to hold a planning and zoning committee meeting, and we're going to discuss it thoroughly, and go from
What
there.
kind of time frame are we looking at?
I would suppose in the next couple months, correct?
Yeah, so planning, any modifications to zoning codes, you have a pretty lengthy process of public hearings and zoning that have to go through. So that process alone will probably take 3 months. I think the discussion, my target would be also probably 3 months. So probably in the next 6 months, depending on.
Did you guys not know this was coming? Did you not know this has been voted on, or was?
So,
up for
Mr.
a
Coleman,
vote,
you've made your
Pardon?
frustration known. So,
Well, I just want to be clear
And-
here.
and I
Why
think
are we
you're-
waiting till the last moment to start making these decisions?
all right, Mr.
You
Coleman,
know.
thank you for your comments. We're going to move on. Our second speaker tonight is Haiti Sadler.
Really?
Sit down.
Really? Oh,
Sit down.
sit down now.
Please. Yep.
That's what we're doing?
Oh,
We
you're-
don't get to have any kind of open debate?
Mr. Coleman,
We
you're.
were all being adults here. What's the problem?
You're done. I've asked you to sit
Oh, I'm
down. All
far from done. I'm
Thank you.
far from done.
right, thank you for your comments.
You be thanking me when I'm sitting over there next round. Let's leave. Let's get my stuff going here. I'm done with
Thank you. Okay. Second is Haiti Sadler. Haiti, you didn't write your address down on the form,
220 Defiance Avenue.
and she'd like to speak to ordinance 2024-099.
I believe that this ordinance is a gateway and an open door to start housing for illegal aliens. So I'm going to humbly ask City Council not to approve this ordinance this evening that's authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Hancock Regional Planning Commission and the Ohio Department of Development to provide services related to economic development revolving loan fund programs. According to the 2020 housing assessment that I'm sure you are all aware of, and I encourage the public to read, Section 7 under policy and strategy recommendations, it says rally stakeholders and build on momentum. Establish a community development organization that puts together financing for affordable housing. Affordable housing, according to all of my research, ends up being housing for illegal aliens, what I refer to them, displaced persons, asylum seekers, and migrants. So that's my concern. I want to do a sidebar to this housing assessment: protect existing stock and energizing neighborhoods with land banks that can aid in land assembly and blight mitigation efforts, which are words that you can find in the CBDG revolving loan fund funded through the Office of Community Infrastructure. I'm sure that you guys all understand this verbiage and that you're reading through all of these documents. The thing is that the public doesn't understand, and I think it can cause a little confusion when we're using all of these words, but they all connect. One word from one administration bringing it down to another, which ends up being the Build Back Better agenda that I keep talking about. I think that's the tendency, is to confuse the people. So I do have a few point questions. Are these funds for the revolving loan fund, are these funds subsidies and incentives for builders to build homes and housing for asylum seekers, displaced persons, migrants, or, as I refer to them, illegal aliens?
I'm sorry, is that a question to
I
somebody
did say
specific?
it as a question. Well, you
And
say I have
per
to
our
address
rules, the
council.
council doesn't have to answer. That's not part of our rules. The mayor might respond if you'd like.
I think it would be best, I'll take notes of your questions, and if you want to continue through your comments, and then I can address them all at the end.
Okay, and one more question. Are the low-paying jobs that you're bringing in being used to accomplish this housing for low to moderate income persons agenda, and the base, low to moderate income, being the asylum seekers? Those are my two questions. I wanted to make a comment about ad hoc committee, thinking that their new rules are giving the impression that Findlay has its own communist party.
You have about a minute and 15 seconds
That's
to
it.
finish.
That's it.
That's it?
I just had the 2 questions.
Great,
Thank you.
perfect.
Go ahead.
So the revolving loan fund, the program-specific guidance is on the Hancock Regional Planning website. It is available for entities that are needing gap financing when they are establishing a business. It also does have some specific fund utilization that we can support projects within low to moderate incomes. Historically, we've done infrastructure projects. Related to your entire question, as I've stated in multiple emails to you, no, the city is not supporting or building housing for low-income individuals or documented. We are not in the development business. We support private development. There are programs through state entities where developers can get funding for price capped or housing, which they can get funding support for their infrastructure build out. However, this is not tied to that. That is not the agenda of anybody. We're all Republicans in this room and understand the principles that we go by. And that certainly is not the case. The state and federal community development block grant program has been used for decades to do a lot of different things. And so I think it's a great program that we have utilized for park projects. We've utilized it for infrastructure projects. We've utilized it to support nonprofit needs. And I understand that you make ties to certain programs. I can't speak to those because that's not what's happening here. But
That's why I'm
the
asking.
revolving loan fund program specifically is focused on supporting gap financing and then providing low interest, no interest loans, and sometimes even granted funds just support economic development programs in the community. And if any citizen has questions about that or is confused by it, I'm happy to answer their questions so they can get clarity, as I know Matt Cordonier with Regional Planning also frequently does.
Okay. Mr. Stashek.
I just want to share, for the benefit of a couple of council members who weren't here when I made my comments, to your point regarding the housing study in 2020. I was very disappointed in the data in that study. It did not hold water. That study argued that Findlay grew 3% a year for a number of years and argued that our population was much bigger than the 0 growth the last census showed. And the entire track of recommended housing to this community was based on the assumption that we grew 3% a year for a number of years. That study also had a number of other invalid data points once you took it in line with the census that was out there. So there is some validity to your concern that that housing study is being used, and I appreciate you mentioning it tonight.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Reports of municipal officers and departments.
A letter from Law Director Rasmussen regarding DFID Resolution 23-2024 and Ordinance 2024-90.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Letter from Law Director Rasmussen regarding funds for postage for certified mail for DFID assessment via Ordinance 2024-91.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Letter from Chief of Police Chief Matthias regarding Ohio Attorney General Law Enforcement Continuing Professional Training Grant.
Questions or comments? Letter be filed.
City Planning Commission agenda of August 8th, 2024, as well as the staff report of August 8th, 2024, and the minutes of July 11th.
3 to be filed.
Letter from City Engineer Kalb regarding Washington Avenue Storm Sewer Upgrades Phase 1, project number 355-12100.
Questions or comments? Letter be filed.
Letter from City Engineer Kalb regarding Han Melrose and Broad resurfacing PID 117-615-32844-200.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Letter from City Engineer Kalb regarding Project Hat Trick, project number 35631-500, appropriation of ODOT funds.
Questions or comments? Mr. Russell.
Jeremy, just to confirm, has ODOT already, has that money been transferred to the city? So this is simply a transfer from one fund to another, or are we still waiting for the 300K from ODOT?
So it was encumbered on their end, so this will be moving it into the project. But this is, we send an invoice down to them for payment, there's a whole agreement with that, but I was waiting around for them to encumber the funds into theirs, so that way we can utilize them, so that we receive the grant agreement and the letter from them that it's good to go.
Mr. Stashak.
Can anybody tell me, has Sheets started their project? It goes to some other ancillary points with regard to this.
Mayor?
They have not started turning dirt. They are set to close tomorrow.
Letter to be filed.
Letter from City Engineer Calb regarding water treatment plant high service pump line repair.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
City income tax monthly collections report for July 2024.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
Findlay Fire Department activities report for July 2024.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
A letter from Hancock Regional Planning Commission Grant Administrator Casey Peninsky regarding Community Development Block Grant Revolving Loan Fund Administration Agreement.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Letter from City Auditor Stashak regarding Health Plan Third Party Administrator.
Questions or comments? Letter to be, Mayor?
I would just request that there be a committee to discuss this. The city myself and Rob were not included in any of these discussions, and our health insurance, employee health insurance committee that typically would be included in some of this conversation was not included, even though they met last week. So I think it would just be beneficial. I don't see any significant concerns with the change, but I think it would just be beneficial for the administration to be brought up to date and employees to have an opportunity to ask questions before we pass this legislation.
My question would be, what committee would that fall under?
The only one I can think of is appropriations. I'm sorry you guys become the collect-all, but that's really the only other one I can think of.
Mr. Stashak?
There's a number of good reasons that this was brought to council in the manner that it is. Primarily, a lot of the data that is dealt with is PHI, Protected Health Information, as hiring and firing authorities. We are not allowed to provide a significant amount of the information that's used by the broker to make these recommendations, number one. Number two, there'll be zero impact to the plan as it stands. It is exactly the same program, same benefits, same cost, everything, with the exception of that we're going to have a phenomenally better service, address serious concerns that we're having with the services that some of our employees are receiving with the current provider. It turns out the existing provider, our third-party administrator, did a wonderful job when we hired them back in 2016 and 2017. But as the ownership has matured and changed, there's been a change in the ownership of that business, and it's had a direct negative impact on the customer service that we have. I'd welcome any discussion, look forward to it, and that was the reason that we made sure Councilman Wolfser got an opportunity to meet with these folks and get a good understanding, and we made sure that that conversation occurred before this letter came to this council, so that he would be in a position to make sure that if there were concerns that should be brought to council, that they were ahead of time. So happy to have any discussion you like, but I can assure you this is an important step in protecting the benefits that we have at the cost we have, and protecting our price points, and allowing us to continue to provide the health plan and the phenomenal benefits that we're providing our employees at one of the lowest price points in the state. And we'll look forward to an opportunity to brag about that price point in any meeting that you decide to have.
So I will leave this up to council whether they feel that this should be referred to appropriations. Mr. Baumann?
I would feel more comfortable that way. I mean, we can never just take the mayor's word for it. So why are you asking us to do that now? I think committee should look at this and make a decision that way.
Mr. Wolfser?
I sat in on the meeting, Councilman Baumann, and spoke with the one change that is happening in this plan, and so spoke with the man and had a good understanding of, it was an hour, it was a lot, it was medical insurance. The mayor, that was her old forte, so I got a quick lesson in medical insurance and how it works, which was quite interesting. This is a great move for us, quite honestly, and we're going to have better the same exact service, their same exact coverage, but better service, which is a good thing. So glad to sit down and talk about it, but please don't be saying that this is something that's under cover. It is not. It's very upfront, and we're
That was
having the
not my-
discussion right now.
That-
That's
that was
what
my-
the innuendo was that. So please don't.
No, that was not my assertion at all.
Okay.
we're
We'll have a
just supposed to
meeting. We'll
believe
sit
them,
down and talk
but we
about
can
it,
never do
and
that.
you're welcome
on,
to come
one
to the
at a time here,
appropriations
guys.
meeting.
Ms. Frishy.
I think, if memory serves me, I think we had a similar discussion in 15 or 16 when we changed providers. And I think actually the company came to council and gave a quick presentation. It really was just the auditor's office conducting regular business. I don't know that it needs to go to appropriations, but if the majority want to have the new party just come to council, it might be just as quick to take care of it. Going off of memory, when this kind of got politicized back in 15, 16.
Mr. Stashek.
Yeah, thanks. In preparation or in anticipation of this, we made sure that the broker was prepared to come and discuss their process, what they've done, their knowledge to a certain level without compromising any protected health information or putting us in a situation where we could jeopardize the rules and things we have to follow. But I think in Councilman Wobser, please speak up if you disagree. I think Risk Strategies and Ben would do a wonderful job speaking to your group if you guys choose to have that meeting.
Mayor?
And I'm fine too. Again, I more so just want the employees to have the opportunity to ask some questions and understand so that it provides support to, hey, you know, we're messing with their benefits. And so I think I'm fine at not even going to a committee. Honestly, we had a health insurance committee meeting last week. If we had had a 10-minute presentation about this change, I wouldn't be requesting this. I just think it would be beneficial. So if the auditor's office is willing to have like a 30-minute meeting where employees can stop in and maybe nobody is interested, I just think it would go a long way when you're messing with people's benefits that they are aware of the changes being made and what the concerns were.
Mr. Stashek.
That is absolutely the wrong way to frame this, that we're messing with people's benefits. Nobody, no changes, nobody's going to see a missed benefit, and it concerns me that that's been used. And I have another concern. We were brought into that last health insurance meeting to talk about something where the employees were given the impression that they had to say over a management right and responsibility. I think it behooves the administration to be a little bit more cautious as to what impression employees are given when we are talking about decisions that are the management's purvey versus decisions that are employees' purvey. Again, I'm not interested in having a Q&A that this council wants to base a decision on with regard to how we are going to manage a $6 million health plan. I am interested in, once council makes the decision as to whether or not they'd like to make this change based on the presentation, I am very interested in giving the employees a huge amount of education on it. And every year we do a open enrollment meeting series. That series will be conducted live this year, not virtually, because we want to make sure that the employees are very, very comfortable, have a very good understanding, and that no loss of service occurs, and that they see and understand why they need to change that medical card in their wallet this year, should you choose to pass this legislation.
Other questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
We need to notice that we had a motion to present it, but not a second.
So per the clerk of council, Mr. Baumann requested that this be referred to the Appropriations Committee. Is there a second councilman? Go ahead.
I would draw that request. I would be
Never mind.
comfortable just seeing,
All right.
just listening to
I
what they
got you.
have to say.
Mr. Wobser?
If that's okay.
No,
Come on, Jim, let's
Brian,
go.
I think that's the right place to do it.
Okay.
Appropriations will take that on. We'll answer all the administration's questions, or I won't. I will call the meeting and sit there
Thank
very
you.
promptly. But we'll get that called at the end of tonight's meeting.
Letter to be filed. Committee reports.
Minutes of June 12th, 2024 for the Water and Sewer Committee.
Questions or comments? Ms. Frishy.
I would just ask that maybe head of water and sewer for the public just understand the big topic of the broken piece of equipment, just so everybody understands. If you can give a quick.
This is the minutes. That's next.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I need a motion to approve the committee report. Mr. Russell, second Mr. Greeno. All those in favor of of approving the Water and Sewer Committee meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. They're, go ahead.
An ad hoc committee met on July 22nd, 2024 to review the revised and finalized 2024-2025 Council's Rules of Procedures. We recommend accepting the proposed changes to the Rules of Procedures for Council.
Mr. Palmer.
Move to accept the committee report.
Second, Mr. DeArmond. Questions or comments? Ms. Frischi.
I watched the quick 15-minute meeting. Were there not a few changes that you guys had, I thought? Minor, but there were some changes.
Yeah, they're
Mr.
in
Palmer.
your packet.
They're
Or
not in the
Mr.
committee
Damon.
report. It doesn't say what you guys did.
This is a red line copy. I mean,
I'm saying your recommendation is accepting the proposed changes. I think it should say what the addition, because to me, we made the changes. And we've been doing 4 meetings to try it out, but it sounded as though in that 15-minute meeting, there were a couple more changes, and I feel that they should be listed instead of me hunting through the 20-page document.
Mr. DeArmond.
It's on page 8 of 19. If you could turn to that in your packet. I can read the changes to you. So under written communications, it's 2 paragraphs. So let me just read the whole thing. Under written communications, all letters addressed to and received by Findlay City Council will be on display to the public during regular council office hours. In all cases, letters that do not have a proper name, address, we added phone number, and signature of the sender will not be considered as sent to council. We added, in all cases, emails that do not have a proper name, address, phone number, confirmation email to the clerk of council or president of council will not be considered. Then second, well, we didn't change the second paragraph, and at the very end, there was a sentence, no written communications will be read unless voted upon approved by council, even if requested. We deleted a sentence, only those letters making a specific request for service or letter that should be referred to a committee of council will be placed on the agenda.
Mr.
Those
Russell.
are the changes.
A question to the committee. What does confirmation email to the clerk of council or president of council mean? What is that?
So I can answer that. That was a request by myself and Denise, in that if we get a generic email that has a name, it came from somebody, it could even, how do we know that that is legitimate or not? So what we were feeling is that we could just email them back, call them, just make sure it came from the person that sent it. It's no different than having somebody sign a letter that sends it to us. We just need to confirm that somehow. In technology, and I'm not sure if it can do it through the city, is you can request a, through the email, request for, I forget the verbiage. Say again?
A read receipt?
Yeah, and so that's all we want to do, is just make sure it's who they said they were, and that if it's going to come to council, that then we've confirmed it. That's all it is, nothing nefarious or anything to that nature. Does that answer your question, Mr. Russell? Okay, Ms. Frischi.
So, I appreciate you reading that out loud, because one of the discussions I remember from the previous meetings was not including the phone number, because you're making that into public document. I mean, it's one thing that we have somebody's address, but then to put their phone number out there for every Tom and Bill and Harry to call, I thought we weren't going to do that. And then on the confirmation email, I recently had an email that came in from a citizen that the city administration is familiar with, asking for a letter to be put into the packet. I forwarded it to Council Secretary Denise, and then I got an email back that it wasn't accepted. I think when you know the citizen, and if you just want to add that address on there, just ask them to do that. Just say, hey, can you resend the email with this address on it? I think phone number's inappropriate, and I think it was discussed in prior committee meetings when you had public input.
So, Ms. Frischie, the letter that you're referring to, I did contact the sender and let him know that it was not going to be accepted unless it was changed to that, and I never received, you were copied on that also, and I never received a response from him, so obviously it wasn't important, or he would have done that.
I think his email was important, and I think we're just making it difficult, and that's all.
And then my next comment too is fair for one, fair for all. If we expect everybody else to follow the rules, why, if there's somebody that's, hang on,
Wasn't
let me
asking
finish.
for that.
If there's somebody that maybe we know, maybe we've heard from before, why do they, are they under a different set of rules than everybody else? That would be my, Mr. Russell.
For the a question for the ad hoc committee also, and it deals with phone number. Is it now a requirement to have a phone number in order to send a email or a letter to city council?
Mr. DeArmond?
I think the phone number is a legitimate concern, Holly, and I received that request from the, and I put it in there, and I don't know, I guess I'm open to removing the phone number.
Yeah, it was just a contact method. That was all it was. And your mention, Frischie, is valid. It is open for public. If you guys are uncomfortable, I have no problem. But again, it's just one tool that we can use to contact them to confirm their email. And the other is that you're requesting that all of this be given to the ward, and they need to be able to get a hold of these people. If all they have is an address and an email, maybe that's enough, not enough. So I just thought a phone number would just be another tool. That's all it is. Again, not nefarious, Ms. Frischie.
Please don't say that, because that you're insinuating something, President Harrington. I'm just going back from the minutes of what the public addressed in committee meetings, and you guys made changes and didn't put it in the recommendation. You want everybody to read it. That is all I said. So why don't we move forward? If there's I would make the motion to remove the phone number as a requirement, if somebody would second that.
Mr. Wobser.
Before I second that, because that's the right direction I think we need to go. Mr. President, on the form that people fill out to speak to us at a meeting, is their phone number on there?
I don't know if that's Denise.
Denise, is it
I know the old one is. I don't have a new one.
on the new form? Is it, Dan?
On our old form it was. She's looking up.
Yeah, there's a spot for it.
Yep, there is a spot on both the old and the new form.
So that form becomes a public document, does it not?
Yes.
It goes into our minutes?
Yes.
Denise?
Well,
It doesn't go into our minutes.
So not
It's a
necessarily.
public record that could be requested.
My concern, I think, is along lines of Holly's. I don't think we need to make citizens' phone numbers public. If it comes in on the email and they send it in, then I think it's fine. If we requested it, then it needs to be redacted if it goes into a public document. I think that's a certain amount of propriety that we could easily take care of. And so with all that, I second Holly's motion to get that worked out. I don't know if that's something that needs to go back to committee to
Just
see
amend
exactly
it.
how that works or not. I'll leave that up to you guys to decide.
I just assume do it now without going back to committee.
Yeah, you could just amend it. So we have a first and a second. All those in favor of amending it
Discussion?
to remove the phone number, say
Discussion?
aye.
Discussion.
Do
Discussion?
you have discussion?
No, it's after. Okay, discussion. Mr. Baumann, did you want to talk about that?
I guess I would just kind of, just to say I agree with Jeff, is there a way we can redact it on the public end and keep it private on our end? So that way, if we need to contact them, no way to do that? Or can you ask that for that separately, away from that public document?
Mr. Hellman?
Can you just put in on the form where you're asking for their phone number, just put in there optional, and a person knows that it's gonna be a public document, If they don't want to put it in there, so be it. Ain't gonna give me
Personally,
any
I
heartburn.
think you guys have made this a lot more difficult than it needed to be. Ms. Frischie?
Well, I think part of the reason it got difficult is because we're thinking that emails are coming in as fake and fraudulent. I say we assume all emails are legitimate from our citizens and just remove that phone number. Makes sense.
I personally like the optional thing. I think that's good. Just understand, if we give you a request, it's gonna have, it might not have a phone number, and they're requesting for you as a council person to contact them. That is just gonna be one less tool that you're gonna have. Ms. Frischie?
If we make it optional, I think it needs to be said in the response email that this becomes a public record. All information in the email is public.
Okay. Mr. Wobser?
I would agree with that comment. If we want to make it optional, I think we just take it off. Honestly, it doesn't need to be there. If somebody doesn't want to give us their phone number to be responded to, that's their prerogative. If we don't get an email back in a response when a council person calls them or contacts them directly, you know, they don't respond, they don't respond. So I don't like the idea of having that
Here's
information
an
floating
idea.
around.
Why, at the bottom of it, we have some narrative at the bottom. What if we indicate that this document is a part of public record and can be requested? So it's not just the phone number, it's their name, address, whatever that document is. Would that be, maybe that's overkill, but everybody needs to understand that. Okay, at this point in time, the motion is to remove the phone number. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Phone number is removed.
So committee report then, there was by Palmer and DeArmond, but that was before the amendment, so.
Okay. Yeah, so I need a motion as
For the-
amended.
Motion to,
Palmer.
motion to approve the committee report as amended.
Thank you. Second, Mr. Baumann. Other discussion? Mr. DeArmond?
I'll second that.
Oh, I already got Mr. Baumann. Thank you.
Oh,
All those
sorry.
in favor of the committee reports as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. It is approved.
I don't know if I can ask this, but does that mean we go back to the revised meeting? Okay. Okay. The Appropriations Committee, to whom was referred a request to discuss the installation of the Havoc system at Fire Station Number 4 via Ordinance 2024-86. We recommend approval of the request in Ordinance 2024-86.
Mr. Wobser?
This is an unusual request that came to us through Chief Eberly. Normally, this stuff would go into capital budget. There's a couple of different reasons it's going to come through here. We made our point, I believe, correct, Mr. Martin, that next time around we need to get this into capital. It's a small amount. Regardless, though, that doesn't matter. But with that, I'll make it a motion to approve the committee report.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Further discussion? All those in favor of the committee report, say aye. Any opposed, nay. The committee report is adopted.
The Water and Sewer Committee met on July 31st, 2024 to discuss a water plant maintenance emergency. We recommend approval of an appropriation of $200,000 toward the emergency repair project, and to waive the formal bidding process.
Mr. Baumann.
Motion to approve.
Second, Mr. Russell. Discussion? Mr. Russell.
Yeah, I got a call from Service Safety Director Martin, I believe it was Monday, saying two words that you'd never hear in the same sentence: small leak and 20-inch pipe. And I appreciate the fact that Jeremy and Jason Phillips, our water superintendent, and the Water and Sewer Committee could meet on short notice on Wednesday. And in essence, there's not a lot of options here. One of the pipes going from the clear well took out got compromised. 2 pumps got taken out of service, and so where we normally have 6 pumps, we're running on 4. A lot of the discussion of the Water and Sewer Committee was on what happens next, and what are we doing to mitigate risks of what happens next in case it is bad. The one major point here is to emphasize is that service to the citizens is not impacted. We're able to produce water and get it out to our customers. One thing that also was of a concern was doing this as a no bid, but we had our 2 most likely vendors examine this, and that was Moser and Kirk Brothers. Both were on hand on short notice to assist us with the evaluation. And I personally send out a shout out to Moser, who is doing some work at the reservoir and really responded promptly to this, making a scuba diver available to the city to help with the stopgap repairs, and made it a priority to help us address this situation. And I think, kind of paraphrasing Jeremy's, City Engineer Kelb's comments, that happens because we have a long-standing good working relationship with them, and because we are a good client for Moser and they are a good contractor with us. When things like this happen, we get response and have immediate assistance, and I very much appreciate their going above and beyond for this. This does need to get passed tonight on suspended readings, and my understanding, as soon as this piece comes in, Moser will be there ready to install, and once again I thank them for their diligence on this.
Mr. Kelb.
Moser, not Moser, Moser. M-O-S-S-E-R. Fremont.
Just real quick, I'll keep it short, but Grant kind of brought it up too, but when we bring stuff to you on emergency and asking why we're pushing so fast on some of these projects, that's why we have these relationships with different contractors, your Moser, your Kirks, your Holmbrinks, your Helms, I can keep going on with that, but when they know, when they come to a project with City Findlay, we get them the money, we get them moving, we can keep them moving on a project. And that speaks a lot to contractors out there when they can set a schedule and they can keep moving. So when we have emergency projects like this, we don't even have to think twice about calling anyone to come to this, and they know we know they'll drop at a hat to be here to fix that. So appreciate you guys pushing that along, Grant. I'm glad you brought that up, because having those relationships do go a long way when we have projects like that that are needing done.
We have a first and a second. All those in favor of the committee report say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The committee report is adopted. Legislation, start with resolutions.
First reading for Resolution 22, 2024. A resolution approving the expenditures made by the Auditor's Office on the attached list of vouchers which either exceed the purchase order or were incurred without a purchase order, exceeding the statutory limit of $3,000, all in accordance with Ohio Revised Code 5705.41D.
Mr. Webster.
Make a motion to approve.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Discussion. Ms. Frishy.
Don, can you give us, I see the one bill is for a legal case for George Martin's, but the other one was with Hartford Insurance for flood insurance. I'm assuming those are parcel numbers. Can you give a little info on that one?
Mr. Martin.
This is just a renewal, and the timing of the PO with the invoice, it was scheduled, it was budgeted, it was just the timing of the POs.
So no increase?
No.
Other questions or comments? All those in favor of the resolution say aye. If your name is called, those opposed, nay.
Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond?
Aye.
Ms. Frishy?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
And Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
The resolution is adopted.
First reading for Resolution 23, 2024. A resolution declaring it necessary to provide enhanced public services in the Downtown Findlay Improvement District and declaring an emergency.
Ordinances.
Third reading for ordinance 2024-80. An ordinance vacating a certain portion of a certain street hereinafter referred to as the Tappan Street vacation in the city of Findlay, Ohio.
Mr. Baumann?
Move for adoption of ordinance number 2024-8080.
Second, Mr. Greeno. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the ordinance say aye. After your name is called, those opposed, nay.
Mr. DeArmond?
Aye.
Ms. Frishy?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
And Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
Third reading for ordinance 2024-81. An ordinance authorizing the establishment of a 12-month moratorium on the establishment of any cultivation, processing, or dispensing of recreational marijuana facilities in the city of Findlay in order for the city of Findlay, Ohio to consider the ramifications of recreational marijuana and potential zoning changes that may be considered and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell?
Move for adoption of ordinance 2024-081.
Second, Mr. DeArmond. Discussion? Mr. Russell?
Couple of points. Number one, this ordinance does not prevent a citizen from cultivating or growing marijuana in their private residences. So that is that was legal when the thing passed, and so that's still, this doesn't affect that. As I said in public discussion, my intent is to work towards finding, supporting the retail establishments that can get established in the city of Findlay and in the appropriate places as determined by Ohio Revised Code, which we're still waiting for that, for the legislator to give us some guidance on, and our zoning, and that supports how the citizens of Findlay want this zoning to work. And I would hope that we would have this so that there is very little delay, as quick as we can, because we will be looking at our zoning to affect the change. This is simply a temporary measure until such time that we can make an informed decision on these, in essence, zoning questions. I support the moratorium and hope it does not last 1 year, that we can get this resolved quicker than that.
Mr. Wobser?
I wish Mr. Coleman would not have left. I too am in favor of the moratorium, but am also in favor of making sure that we do ultimately get this done and get it done right from the standpoint of where to put these type of businesses in our community. As Councilman Russell pointed out, our community did vote in favor of this, and if you look at just the city of Findlay, the county did not, but hey, city of Findlay did, and so we need to get this done, but we need to do it the right way. My question on this, though, and Mayor, maybe you can help with this, the tax distribution on marijuana. Do we know how this is all working yet and what this looks like?
There has been some discussion at the state, and they do have a couple of different levels of taxation. There is one level of the taxation that they have not determined how that would potentially be distributed. And I also believe that they have not really provided guidance on what additional taxes local municipalities may or may not be able to leverage on it. So that's really the what we're still waiting on from the state. So I don't feel comfortable really saying anything beyond that at this point.
Very good, but they are looking at that, and because that's going to be my question is, do we have the ability to add an additional sales tax on from a municipality standpoint?
Mayor?
I would just add as well that it is still illegal to smoke it on the streets, and that is something that will continue to be illegal in the state of Ohio. So that does not change. One of the other things that I think we'll be gathering information on is any additional licensing or business permits, things like of that nature that may or may not be allowed. That again could be a potential revenue source for the city of Findlay.
All those in favor of the ordinance say aye. If your name is called, those opposed, nay.
Ms. Frishy?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Nay.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mrs. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
Third reading for ordinance 2024-82. An ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to enter into contracts for the purchase of a new utility pickup truck for the city of Findlay Traffic Signals Department, appropriating and transferring funds thereto, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Greeno.
Move for adoption of ordinance 2024-082.
Second, Mr. Hellman. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the ordinance say aye. Aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond.
Aye.
And Ms. Frishy.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
Second reading for ordinance 2024-84. An ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to enter into contracts for the city of Findlay Cube Building Generator Project number 319-23000, appropriating and transferring funds thereto, and declaring an emergency. Second reading for ordinance 2024-86. An ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to enter into contracts for the installation of a new air handler in the Mechanic Bay air conditioning unit at the city of Findlay Fire Station number 4, appropriating and transferring funds thereto, and declaring an emergency.
I'm sorry, Mr. Wobser.
Jeremy, was there a issue? I know the people that were going to do this are already doing work on site. Do we need to push this through or not? Did we lose
I mean,
any?
we can because scheduling wise, they're there. We don't have to worry about mobilization or anything like that. We can. It's readily available. We can get it done. Kind of like what we talked about in appropriations. It's not the end of the world, but we can also get more usage out of it. August and September, even October, we're seeing warmer weeks as well. So if we could move it along, it would just help scheduling with the current contractor.
Second reading for ordinance 2024-87. An ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to advertise for bids where required and enter into a contract or contracts for construction of various projects in accordance with the 2024 department equipment list, appropriating and transferring funds for said capital expenditures, and declaring an emergency. Second reading for ordinance 2024-88. An ordinance appropriating and transferring funds and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell.
This is that a unique one where Helms Construction, who did the work at the airport, is still waiting on us at 10 or 20% of the final, because the state has to sign off on something and before they get the last 10%. Helms is Engineer Calb mentioned, is one of our go-to contractors that has been a great city partner, and this legislation helps them get paid for work that they have already completed, and helps them get paid sooner, and therefore I move that council statutory rules be suspended and ordinance 2024-088 be given its third reading.
Second, Mr. Baumann. All those in favor of suspension of the rules, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond.
Aye.
Ms. Frishy.
Nay.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Rules of council have been suspended, and the clerk will give this its third reading.
Ordinance 2024-88.
Mr. Palmer.
Move for adoption of ordinance number 2024-88.
Second, Mr. Baumann. Discussion. Ms. Frishy.
So when we do a project like this, don't we appropriate the full amount into the project?
So since this is an FAA project, 95% or 90% of it is paid through FAA. Well, per their regulations, we have to hold 10% of the construction back because that's their retainage. But we don't appropriate the full construction amount. We appropriate the funds, but we send it into the FAA for them to reimburse. So we don't actually pay the contractor, then they pay us. We send the invoice to the FAA, then they send it directly to the contractor. So with this, there's still 10% that's out there because they got to finish their closing documents. Well, we've accepted the project. Helms has done the project. We're good with it. It's in operation. Instead of them holding the money back on them because it's nothing that they've done, this is just simply appropriating the money. So then now when we get that final invoice from the FAA, we'll just keep that money to fully reimburse it.
Ms. Frishy?
So when we do projects like this, do we tell the contractor this is how the grant is working? Because I'm assuming the FAA is, they come down and they inspect to clear it, to pay it, right? Not that I'm saying Helms is doing anything wrong. I'm just asking about process.
It's in the documents that, with the 500 pages of documents within
That Helms knew.
It's in there, but this has taken a lot longer than what normal projects have. With the FAA getting reauthorized, we talked up to the Detroit, and we said, hey, how long do you think? And they said, we have a huge queue right now because we weren't reauthorized. Now we're reauthorized again. All these are shoved in, into our queue, so they don't know how soon it could be. We could get it tomorrow, but we could also get it from another 6 months from now. So I don't want to hold them up any longer. Really, from our end, with our consultants, RSNH, who's working with that, they have to get the documents to them and work through. So construction-wise, the FAA is good with it. We're good with it. It's just really now it's closing documents on our end.
Okay, and the dollar amount was what again?
I think 140,000 roughly. I don't have that directly in front of me.
Just needed ballpark. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. If your name is called, those opposed, nay.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond.
Aye.
Ms. Frishy.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
Second reading for ordinance 2024-89. An ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to waive formal advertising and bidding requirements and enter into contracts with Homebrick Excavating LLC for sanitary sewer replacement in the alley of a section of Fifth Street in the city of Findlay, appropriating funds thereto and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Greeno?
Considering that this sewer is being held together with roots from a tree, and it may not last past the next heavy rain we get, like today, I would like to see the statutory rules of council be suspended and this ordinance given its third reading.
Second, Mr. Hellman. All those in favor of suspension of the rules say aye. If your name is called, those opposed, nay.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond.
Aye.
Ms. Frishy.
Nay.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
And Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Rules of council have been suspended, and the clerk will give this ordinance its third reading.
Ordinance 2024-89.
Mr. Palmer.
Move for adoption of ordinance number 2024-89.
Second, Mr. Hellman. Discussion? Ms. Frishy?
The reason I was a no on suspension of the rules, yes, we have an issue, but we know it wasn't leaking sewage and we were not going out for bid. So those were my reasons for not pushing it into suspension of the rules.
Other questions or comments? All those in favor of the ordinance say aye. If your name is called, those opposed, nay.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond.
Aye.
Ms. Frishy.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
And Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
First reading for ordinance 2024-90, an ordinance determining to proceed with provision of the enhanced public services in the downtown Findlay Special Improvement District and declaring an emergency. First reading for ordinance 2024-91, an ordinance appropriating funds and declaring an emergency. First reading for ordinance 2024-92, an ordinance appropriating funds and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell?
This is a simple transfer of money from one fund to the other based on a Ohio Attorney General law enforcement grant. Therefore, I make a motion that council statutory rules be suspended and ordinance 2024-092 be given its second and third reading.
Second, Mr. Baumann. All those in favor of suspension of the rules say aye. If your name is called, those opposed, nay.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond.
Aye.
Ms. Frishy.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
And Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Rules of council been suspended, and the clerk will give this its second and third reading.
Ordinance 2024-92. Ordinance 2024-92.
Mr. Baumann,
Move for adoption of ordinance number 2024-092.
second Mr. Hellman, discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of the ordinance say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond.
Aye.
Ms. Frishy.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
First reading for ordinance 2024-93, an ordinance appropriating and transferring funds and declaring an emergency. First reading for ordinance 2024-94, an ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to enter into a project agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation for the Han Melrose Avenue and Broad Avenue resurfacing PID 117615, project number 328442000, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell,
Jeremy, to confirm that this is an agreement to do the cost share on the project. We're not at this point appropriating money or going out to bid or anything. This is just the next step in the paperwork.
Correct. This is just the grant agreement or project agreement with them to use our large city funds that we get yearly to pay 80% of the project.
Mr. Russell,
Move that council statutory rules be suspended and ordinance 2024-094 be given its second and third reading.
second Mr. Palmer. All those in favor of suspension of the rules say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond.
Aye.
Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
Ms. Frishy.
Nay.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
And Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Rules of council been suspended, and the clerk will give this ordinance its second and third reading.
Ordinance 2024-94. Ordinance 2024-94.
Mr. Wobser,
Make a motion to approve.
second Mr. Greeno, discussion. Ms. Frishy,
Jeremy, what was the fund that we were using that we received, and what was the 80% cost that we were using from that fund?
So it's from the MPO funds that we get. It's large city funds that we receive through ODOT. 80% of the estimate right now is about $1 million from the large city funds, and we'll be covering about $250,000 of that at our current estimate.
all those in favor of the ordinance say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond.
Aye.
Ms. Frishy.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
And Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
First reading for ordinance 2024-95. An ordinance accepting the designated area as shown on the Covington Green Subdivision First Edition Replat Number 2, which has been accepted by the City Planning Commission. First reading for ordinance 2024-96. An ordinance accepting the designated area as shown on the Dale Park Subdivision Final Plat, which has been accepted by the City Planning Commission. First reading for ordinance 2024-97, and ordinance appropriating funds and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell,
Move that council statutory rules be suspended and ordinance 2024-097 be given its second and third reading.
second Mr. Baumann. All those in favor of suspension of the rules say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. DeArmond.
Aye.
Ms. Frishy.
Nay.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
This rules of council been suspended, and the clerk will give this its second and third reading.
Ordinance 2024-97. Ordinance 2024-97.
Mr. Baumann,
Move for adoption's ordinance number 2024-097.
second Mr. Greeno, discussion. Ms. Frishy,
Jeremy, it was said this evening that Project Hat Trick, AKA Sheets, has not closed on the property yet. So was there even emergency to be moving these funds?
So we have enough funds to cover 300,000, but this is what ODOT committed to the project. So having it sit for another 2 council meetings or having it utilized right now will actually ensure that within our project that we had the ODOT funds that we were accounting for. So that's why our project is still moving forwards, but now that it's finally encumbered into ODOT, you know, that's what they committed to the project. So moving it for our usage, for reimbursement, sending reimbursements to them, I see that as an advantage.
Mr. Stashek.
I guess a point of order with regard to use of emergency clause. I'm not sure that this would qualify. I can't speak, and I'm not the law director, but if that's the case, you might want to reconsider the use of emergency clause. It's something where we've just said on the record it's not necessarily.
I've never seen an instance that we were needed to not do emergency on this kind of legislation. Mr. Kalb.
So, you know, like I stated, we have enough funds in the project to cover it through our capital, but also we're doing the project. So I need to be able to have the funds in there to send reimbursements to ODOT. And, you know, we have 629 funds on there too. So what I don't want to get to is we get to a point where we're using up those funds. You know, we're having to use our capital on that. With how we move through the reimbursement, it will go directly to our contractor. If not, we're going to have the same FAA situation where we're covering it and we're reimbursing ourselves. So making sure that we can keep our financials in line and make sure that we're not overspending one or another, I see that as an advantage.
Ms. Frishy.
My concern is if they haven't closed on the site yet, there's a what if out there. And I'm not saying that what if is going to happen, but there's processes in place and we don't have our I's dotted and T's crossed. So you're telling me the money's encumbered, but there's still a pause there if they don't close. So they signed their documents for the grant dollars through 629 Ohio, whatever it was, but they still have to close on the site to build. That's all I'm saying. We have a process in place. I'm glad that we make decisions sometimes to move forward, just like with the FAA. You know, what if a FAA comes in and says they didn't like how the project was done, so now we just encumbered $140,000 that might not get reimbursed. I don't think that's happening with Helms, and I hope that's not happening with Sheets. But as a council person, there's a process in place for a reason, and you're telling me you don't see the emergency needed, so I would make the motion to table.
Mr.
A motion on the
Mayor,
floor.
either one.
I have a motion on the floor. What was the motion? To table.
Motion dies for lack of a second. Mayor?
I was just going to add, if you recall, when we went through, one of the reasons that we were comfortable moving forward with the infrastructure improvements was because the execution of that 629 agreement does provide for some reimbursement to the community if they do not meet their requirements. So I think it's behoove us to continue to move forward with the project because the infrastructure work that is being done needs to be done by the end of the year to keep them on their construction timeline.
Ms. Frishy.
We just said we weren't in a rush for the funds and that there's plenty of time and there was no emergency needed at this time.
Mayor?
What Engineer Kalb stated is that there is money in the funds for us to continue to pay our own money. This is receiving the state dollars, and I think it's advantageous of us to use the state dollars before we use our own local dollars as much as possible to continue to move the project forward. And again, when the emergency clause is utilized, all that is stating is that it is for the public benefit and that it does not wait the 30-day waiting period. When you look at legal precedents, anything related to infrastructure improvements is a reasonable method to use forward and use the emergency clause.
All those in favor of the ordinance say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Ms. Frishy?
Nay.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wopser?
Aye.
Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
And Mr. DeArmond.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
First reading for ordinance 2024-98, An ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to waive formal advertising and bidding and enter into contracts with Mosher Construction Incorporated for repairs to one of the high service pumps at the city of Findlay water treatment plant, appropriating funds thereto, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell.
Move that council statutory rules be suspended and ordinance 2024-098 be given its second and third reading.
Second, Mr. Greeno. All those in favor of suspension of the rules say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond.
Aye.
And Ms. Frishy.
Aye.
Rules of council have been suspended, and the clerk will give this ordinance its second and third reading.
Ordinance 2024-98. Ordinance 2024-98.
Mr. Ballman.
Move for adoption.
Second, Mr. Greeno. Discussion. All those in favor of the ordinance say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond.
Aye.
Ms. Frishy.
Aye.
And Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
First reading of ordinance 2024-99. An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to enter into an agreement with the Hancock Regional Planning Commission, hereinafter referred to as HRPC, and the Ohio Department of Development, hereinafter referred to as ODOD, to provide services related to the Economic Development Revolving Loan Fund, RLF program, years 2024 and 2026, retroactive to January 1st, 2024, and declaring an emergency. I think it should be through. First reading for ordinance 2024-100, an ordinance authorizing the auditor of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to contract with Medben as the third-party administrator, TPA, and other healthcare plan-related services for the city of Findlay, Ohio, for the city of Findlay's healthcare plan, and declaring an emergency.
Old business. Ms. Frishy.
I have two items. I need to go back to the FAA moving of funds for Helms. I need to change my vote to a no on that final, if you could do that, Denise. And then my second item is the Rainick property, Mayor. We have filled that in, and it's got some green grass going on. I've been asking for a month where for the final the final test bores, and that's being refused to me. I was supposed to get a letter, but I want to know, and the public needs to know, that that property is cleaned to a level for people to be on it. So
Mayor?
can you get that information?
Yep, I have already spoke with Matt Cordonier and Mike Kuhnfair, the gentleman who presented on the previous environmental work and has been doing the work, is finalizing his report that will include the testing, and we have asked him to provide a letter that will be included in the council packet, hopefully for the next meeting, though I can't guarantee it because we'll be waiting for that from him. And then if necessary, he'll come in and present the findings as well.
Ms. Frishy.
So two more things now on that Rainick property. So the contractor was paid, so I assume they had the samples, and I don't understand why it is taking so long just to have them. I don't need a letter per se. I could have that in the meantime for the sampling. And the other question, only because I'm not sure, are we using the same engineering firm that the county is using? Or did we end up with a different outside company to get independent conclusion?
So engineer or environmental
Environmental,
consultant?
I'm sorry.
Yep, the environmental consultant, CC, has been doing work for both the county and the city. They do a lot of work for both entities. So on this specific project, the county has been handling that. So the Rainick project, really all the reports and invoices, et cetera, have been run through the county commissioners. And then because they were using grant funding, regional planning was involved for the administration of that. I have also not seen the final report. They had provided kind of a high level, yet, you know, we're good. They weren't going to fill it in until the work was complete. It is environmentally clean for parks and recreation, that high child exposure, as all properties in that area will be as we continue to move forward with the environmental cleanup. So there is not a report to be provided to you at this point in time. That's why you haven't received it. Yes, we've been working with CEC, and one of the things that I'm currently waiting on from the county, and I know it's been a long time, I know one of the outstanding items I have is an agreement and an environmental consultant that will represent the city through the benching work. I'm still waiting on that. I haven't brought that back to you because I've been discussing some items with the county, and I would like it to be bundled into the MOU agreement that we will have for the benching project, as we did with the phase 1 benching. I think that's the cleanest way to do it. So that's why I have not brought that back to you all, but that is still on my radar and certainly will be brought when appropriate.
So we had two separate. I get the county doing it. I wasn't at the one meeting where, I don't know if it was appropriations, agreed to hire an independent consultant to act on our behalf. That is not the same company, or it is?
We have not hired anyone
That's what
at
you're
this
talking
point in
about now.
time. So that
Okay.
will be a discussion point that will be brought back to this group.
Thank you.
Old business. Mr. Wobser.
I'd like to make a motion to reconsider ordinance 2024-86. That is the AC unit for the fire station for $16,000 and change.
Mr. Russell? All those in favor of reconsidering 86, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Ballman,
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond,
I don't understand.
reconsider.
Why are we reconsidering it? I'm sorry.
Because I'd like to discuss it some more.
I'm sorry.
I would like to discuss it
Okay.
and take a vote on it.
I'll listen.
Ultimately,
Aye.
Ms. Frishy,
Nay.
sorry, I've thrown off a little bit there. Mr. Greeno,
Aye.
Mr. Hellman,
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer,
Aye.
Mr. Palmer,
Aye.
Mr. Russell,
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki,
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
aye.
Ordinance 2024-086 has been pulled and is now under consideration. Mr. Wobser.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend council's rules and give this legislation its third reading.
Second, Ms. Warnicki. All those in favor of the suspension of the rules, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. DeArmond,
Aye.
Ms. Frishy,
Nay.
Mr. Greeno,
Aye.
Mr. Hellman,
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer,
Aye.
Mr. Palmer,
Aye.
Mr. Russell,
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki,
Aye.
Mr. Wobser,
Aye.
Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
Rules of council been suspended, and the clerk will give this its third reading.
Ordinance 2024 Mr.
Mr. Wobser.
Make a motion to approve.
Second, Mr. Hellman. Oh, I'm sorry.
I wasn't seconding that. I was gonna raise my hand and ask why
We
we're
gotta
doing
wait
this.
until we're at that point.
We're not at that
Second,
point?
Mr. Greeno. Now, discussion. Mr. Hellman.
What's the reason for reconsidering this, if you don't mind, Mr. Webster?
The reason for reconsidering it is the folks are on site, they're gonna do the work. We can get the stuff ordered and get it in place and actually get some use out of it here while the weather is still hot. The reason we're doing this, if you read through Jeremy's letter, was that the mechanics bay at Fire Station 4 is a box and it has no ventilation to it beyond heating, which in this time, especially today, it was not a really good thing. So we're trying to get that where it's a workable situation for those guys who do an outstanding job of keeping our fire trucks moving and do it in a very cost-effective manner.
Ms. Frishy.
I don't have a problem with it. Thanks.
So I'm a little surprised by Councilman Wobser suspending the rules, because from the committee discussion that we had, there was an in-depth discussion. First of all, it wasn't originally put in the capital budget, so it was, and the department hasn't had AC in there for 20 years. We, as council, have moved forward a fire truck for appropriation by a year or two. We've also purchased some swans this year and a swan house and some fencing that wasn't planned for. And we can always say, oh, it's just this. It's only $16,000, which is what Councilwoman Warnicki kept saying. Holly, what's the big deal? It's only $16,000. But every time we do that, we're changing what we planned for the year. I'm not wishing our firemen to melt and die by any means, But the second part of the discussion was we are not going out for bid. And yes, it's under the bid amount. However, it wasn't planned for, and I said I cannot support suspending of the rules to at least let this discussion go through. At this point, Klaus Construction's doing the electrical, and Verl Warnemont, which is All-Star, is doing the AC unit. They have done work with us. That's great. But we didn't plan for it. And if we're going to push this forward again and eliminating all of council's process and we're going to go into our own little world of Oz, I can't support it. And I would have supported it if it went 3 readings.
Other questions or comments? Mr. Wobser?
I appreciate Councilwoman Frisch's concerns and comments about the world of Oz. The situation is that we have 10 people who can make informed decision, and that's why we bring it up, to allow these 10 people to make an informed decision given all the facts.
Mr. Russell?
To the members of the Appropriation Committee that voted to forward a recommendation on to council, I'm wondering the thought process on why this didn't need to go through capital planning, and why because that's where I get hung up with this, is that it should have been on the capital plan. It's been hot previous years, so what put it over the capital planning hump, so to speak, for any of the 4 members from appropriations that voted to recommend this?
Ms. Warnicki?
Well, one of the reasons was that, for me, was that Mr. Cal was there and said that we have had, I don't know what the technical term is, but money come back on a couple projects in the capital plan. So there's money there for this. And also, just in my opinion, running a business, and I am aware government doesn't work quite like a business, although sometimes maybe it should, things come up that aren't in the budget that need done. And I'm thankful on my business that when our garage door got stuck last year, we fixed it that day instead of waiting 6 weeks. So I would vote for this. And I was very upset that there was such a discussion and that we keep bringing up the bid when it's not over the bid thing. You don't want to do bids for things that aren't over the bid. It sets a bad precedent.
Ms. Frischie?
Councilman Russell made the point of why it wasn't in capital planning. That was discussed as well. And that is because it hasn't come up as a priority. The chief was there and spoke about it. He understood where I was coming from in the discussion that we were having. And, you know, when Councilman Warnicki says, well, Jeremy said money came back to our capital. Remember, that money came back and we have a fire truck to pay for. It's not just sitting there. We're spending money. And whether it's 16,000 or million or 4 million or whatever. So the reason, and then the other thing was when you asked, Grant, I want to address you as best I can, is it was not on the capital because it wasn't a priority for the chief. He also said, you know, it is a small amount. He could have put it in his operation budget. And I asked him, what do you have left in your operation budget this year? Do you need 16,000? Can we do half of it? You know, what do you have left? And his answer was, I don't have any. I can't move that right now. So next year, it may, if we didn't do it now, because we are halfway through the season, if we didn't do it now, it could be a capital project next year, or it could be in his operational budget, and it just moves through. But remember, money came back, but money is being spent in other places, like for fire trucks.
Mayor?
The only final comment I would give to this is that, you know, we said things come up. And when we go through the capital budget, we work with our departments, and at times we say, okay, pull things out. Can we wait on those? Let's adjust, because we're always trying to have things balanced. We're trying to have some carryover. We're reprioritizing things. And sometimes when things come up, we say, okay, let's hold on doing that. You're right. They have been working in there for a period of time without AC. However, we've we're consolidating the number of guys we have in there. We're having in more longer prolonged periods of heat. Our guys deserve a good working environment, and I know you're not arguing about that. We can take full responsibility that yes, we made an adjustment and this item was not carried over in the capital budget. We acknowledge. Sorry. I'll start making sure we add a little extra buffer line item for those random things that come up. But this is what it is, and now we need to make a decision, and it's advantageous for us to move in expedited fashion to get the work done, and saving money on having to remobilize crews, and the cost of things, as we all know, is only going to increase. So I don't think it makes sense to wait on something as insignificant. Though money is important and we save every single dollar, but I can tell you this is a lot less expensive than having somebody have heat stroke in the working bay because they're working under a truck for 3 hours in 90-degree heat.
Ms. Frischie.
And in this committee meeting, and it's not an emergency. Chief said it could go 3 readings. He understood. And again, Councilman Woopser also seemed to be on that page, at least in the committee meeting, from my impression.
My only final comment is that our department heads are always going to defer to, yes, we can take a longer amount of time. That does not necessarily always mean that that is the right operational decision. So I think moving forward on this and getting it taken care of is the right decision.
All those in favor of the ordinance say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Ms. Frischie?
Nay.
Sorry, Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Nay.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
And Mr. DeArmond?
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted. New business. Mr. Ballman.
I would just like to take this opportunity to wish our Public Works Department head, Dave Hans. What is his title now? Superintendent? I don't know. I can't keep up with it. But it is his birthday today. He's a resident of the 5th Ward, and we're happy to have him. He's a blessing to our city, and just thank him for that. And I'll probably get an earful just for this statement that I've made. But anyways, happy birthday, Dave.
Other new business. Mr. Wobser.
The Appropriations Committee that has been called for to review our third-party vendor for medical benefits. I'll be finding a date for that via email, and because I know that we're going to probably want to rope Ben Oatley into this, and so we have an outside person that we have to get their dates also.
Mr. Stashak.
I've asked him to reserve the night of the third reading as the time when he was planning on coming in, pretty much regardless, in case there were any questions by this body. So I would think if you're willing to do it just prior to the meeting, that would probably work out. So just for your benefit. So
I tell you what, Jim, we'll talk about this offline. We'll make sure that works with everybody. But I think that sounds like a good idea. I'll get back to everybody via email.
Other new business. Mayor.
You stole a little bit of my thunder because I was also going to say happy birthday to Dave, which will embarrass him completely. But I also wanted to give a quick shout out. So one of the priorities that we have been making some planning efforts on is cleaning up the river, including litter, but also going through and doing kind of brush hog along the riverbanks. So don't be surprised if you start to see that happening. Our goal is to keep the larger trees and then clean out some of the overgrowth, and then work in future years to then work with native plantings along the riverbank that are less invasive and help with water quality, bank integrity, and water quality. One of the things that our team had on their list to do was cleaning tires and other large objects out of the river, because somehow that they collect there. That's a thing that somehow happens. Somebody explain that to me. I'd be happy to learn how that happens. But we had a group that reached out to us and wanted to help with that. And these were some young people in our community that do a fishing group and volunteer in the community. So I don't have all of their names, but it's led by Ari Goldstein. And I will be sharing some pictures because we're going to have some pizza with them next week. to thank them, but they cleaned kind of along the riverbanks from Lye Creek, Eagle Creek to Walmart, and they collected about 175 tires out of the river, along with some bikes and other trash and debris. It is wild if you just go sometimes and see. So it's very annoying to me. You can only do it certain times because the water needs to be low enough, it needs to be accessible, etc. So these kids literally were in like boats and along the banks cleaning it up. So I wanted to give them a huge shout out because they're helping us move forward our initiative. I want to lecture whoever keeps putting tires in the river. You are on my not so happy with you list. And thanks Dave for his continued work as we coordinate with soil and water and all of the different entities that are involved in the river to continue to clean that up and make it a better asset than a liability. Additionally, I just wanted to let you know we are working, our Unhoused Coalition has been really effective, but we're continuing to look at, with the new Supreme Court ruling, what ordinances we may be able to put in place to help with some of the public camping, individuals sleeping on public streets. But we want to make sure that we address it in a comprehensive manner and don't just make homelessness a crime. That's not the way to address something. We also need to have resources and ways to kind of direct them and make sure that they have safe environments to go to. So we're continuing to make progress on that. Yes, we do have some homeless individuals still sleeping around, on the streets and sidewalks, et cetera, but it has been decreased, and we're continuing to work with local resources to put together a comprehensive plan to address that. I think those were all of my top items.
Mr. Hellman.
Mayor, can you, I agree with you with the litter and riverbanks and tires and refrigerators, God only knows what. Is there a way to triple the littering fines or somehow discourage that?
I think, unfortunately, the problem is most of the time we don't catch the individuals that do it. They could do it under the cover of darkness, or it rolls out. I don't know exactly how this happens, but I think increasing a fine when we're not really able to impose a fine on people because we can't determine who they are isn't going to help too much. But if I start figuring out who's doing it, then I'm happy to triple the fines.
I'll look for them. Thank you.
Mr. Stashek.
I can share on that note, there are a couple buried landfills where you do have tires along creeks and you get wear, and then the tires pop out and then they go down the creeks and down into the river. There are one or two I know for sure. And a lot of those tires come from those old landfills.
Other new business. Mr. Stashek.
I have a quick housekeeping item. Came to my attention. The administration had put on some informational meetings for the staffs, and I sent my folks down. And there was some discussion about, in the not too distant future, preserving our high cash balances by issuing debt and making money on interest. I don't know if that's been talked about with any council members, but I want to make sure it's clear that with rare exception, that cannot be done. And I get emails regularly. I got one here in my hand from Key Bank here, where they actually have to have me validate via paperwork that none of the monies that we're investing in our savings into bond proceeds and whatnot are monies that were from bond proceeds that were issued for debt. So I think the discussion needs to revolve around where are we going long-term with our cash balances. I think we need to talk about cash flow long-term, and I think if we're getting to the point where we have large amounts of cash, rather than talking about protecting it, how we use it properly, and if we have so much cash we can't use it, we should be talking about what to do for the taxpayer. So that's very important that you folks keep that in mind. The administration themselves have almost no role in debt issuance. The role is that of your fiscal officer, your law director, and this council. Now, they do have a political side to it, an operational side, but when we're talking about debt, make sure if you're involved in a conversation about issuing debt down the road, that myself and my office is involved right up front. That's very, very important.
Yeah, I just can shed a little more light on, as you guys know, we did have the employee communication picnics, and I shared feedback that I have also shared with you all is that the city's fortunate to have been able to build up a strong cash position. My thought process on how we continue to manage that wisely is, one, we want to keep a strong financial reserve so that in economic downturns, which happen, the economy is cyclical, things happen. We want to be able to not have to make any significant operational changes at a whim. The next thing then is how do we invest those remaining dollars into things that are going to provide an economic and financial return to our city and continue to build our income tax revenue base. When we look at that, then we also need to have a conversation around debt. And as the auditor and Councilman Wobser know, we have met a couple of times with the municipal financial advisor that the auditor has brought in to talk about, one, our policies, things that we can be doing, if anything different, to support economic development as a city, but then also looking at how do we manage our cash flow long term and what should we be doing to do that. With the current market, there is an opportunity to utilize debt rather than continuing to spend our cash, and by protecting our cash position and investing or putting debt out wisely, that is of benefit to us. We're able to incur interest on the cash that we are protecting. And so right now we have been working on a couple of different things. They're not quite ready to come to council, but we're talking operationally on what are those priorities, what are big ticket items, what are the types of items that in a bond, in the bond market are looked favorably upon. And I have shared some of those potentials with the auditor, Councilman Wobser, as well as Andrew. And once we have a more refined proposal, then we will most likely come to council through the auditor's office to say, here are a couple of different options that the administration would recommend. Here is the long-term cash flow impacts of that. Here is the economic impact they provide to the community, and here is why we were recommending them. So that is the overarching conversation that I had with council or with the employees. I understand the different avenues and that, we're not using bond proceeds to invest in the market. What I'm saying is that right now we can borrow at a lower rate than the investment or interest income that we would generate off of maintaining our cash in bank accounts. And so again, we will come to you all through the auditor's office for a comprehensive conversation, and I look forward to that, but I completely understand the importance and the responsibility that we have if we have that conversation.
Other new business. Entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Baumann, second Mr. Russell. All in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. We are adjourned.